Hello, welcome. Welcome to George Washington University. Welcome to the Homeland Security Program, and welcome to PSHS 6240 Political Violence and Terrorism. I hope this course, as well as this program as a whole, fulfills both your academic and intellectual needs. I'm Rowan Sharma, and I will be your instructor for the next 8 weeks. So, again, welcome to the course, welcome to the program. Before I go into what this course is, I want to talk about what this course is not. This course is not a course on force protection. This is not a course on link analysis. It is not a course on hostage rescue. It does not cover any of those narrow topics that you might think is associated with a terrorism course if you're coming from the government or from the military. This course is a look at terrorism as a social and political phenomenon. We're going to look at terrorism from the angle of history, politics, policy, psychology, even a little bit of philosophy in there. We're going to look at this terrorism phenomenon from multiple perspectives so you can gain a deeper understanding than what you might see in the cable news or what's out in the immediate news. I want to just emphasize that terrorism is a phenomenon that unfortunately gets wrought with emotion, it's wrought with politics, just like a lot of issues that cause death. But unfortunately, this type of emotion takes us away from proper analysis. And that's what I'm hoping you get from this course, to look at the terrorism issue with a lot more scrutiny than what you might see out on the TV or on the internet, particularly after an attack occurs. And this course will give you the tools and the analytical basis necessary to look at terrorism as a professional, to look at it with a lot more rigor, and to hopefully come up with solutions that are appropriate and not just based on emotion or based off on immediate politics. Now, before I get into this, I just want to emphasize that this course is an intellectual course. If you're, again, coming from the military, coming from the government, many of you might have experience with just clicking through to get to the end and get your certification. That is not what this course is about. This course is, you need to do the reading, you need to listen to the lectures, you need to take notes on the lectures, you need to interact with your classmates, and you need to think about these issues that are brought up pretty consistently, even after when you're away from the computer or away from the readings. So I want to make sure that I plant that seed early in this course. And I know a lot of people have been away from academia, some for a couple years, maybe others for even a longer period of time. So I want you to get back into that mindset of not just doing classes so you can see what you can get participation and learn something that you can use immediately, but to do a class so it affects your thinking patterns and affects your intellectual capabilities. And that's what I hope you get from this course, as well as the rest of the courses in this program. So the course layout, it's an 8-week course, but it's really a 16-week course compressed down to 8 weeks. So it's fast, a lot of reading. You can't miss a week. If you miss a week, you'll already be out of the game. You have to do the readings every day. You have to do work every day. And that's what this course and the other courses are designed to do. You get your master's in a little bit shorter of a time, but you also are working much, much more harder every day to achieve that goal. So for this course, again, 8 weeks. This week that we're going to look at terrorism as an existential threat. Is terrorism an existential threat? And to put it another way, is it worth the billions, trillions, depending on how you count it, dollars that we've spent to deal with the threat? While there's so many other policy issues out there that do kill many more people than terrorism. So we're going to look at it kind of to bracket the issue for this first week. Then next week, we're going to look at history. As I mentioned, history is a big part of this course. And if you grew up on 9/11 or grew up were born in the 90s, you might only associate terrorism with Al-Qaeda and ISIS and 9/11. But terrorism has a long history. And we're going to go back to terrorism after World War II, and look at historical case studies of terrorist groups that occurred back then. And what you're going to see is that there's certain patterns that happen, whether it was terrorist groups in the 1940s or whether you see Al Qaeda and ISIS now. The same patterns, the same objectives and tactics are actually not too dissimilar than you might look. So, in order to understand the phenomenon now, we have to look back in history. And then the second part of week 2, we're going to ask, what is terrorism? Some of you might think you know it, but in fact, there are facets of terrorism that are very debatable. The Fort Hood shooting in 2009, people think it might not be terrorism. The Charlottesville attacks in 2017, there is certainly debate whether they should be considered terrorism. Should certain people who are associated with terrorist groups be considered terrorism, and should certain actions by military people be considered terrorism? So we're going to look at that, and that's where the philosophy and ethics get involved in this course, and we're looking at it from multiple facets. And the more you focus on think about that, the better you'll do on the paper, because that's what the first paper is on. Week 3 will be history part 2, road to 9/11. But this is really the road to 9/11 and the road to ISIS. And I think as people who are in this field, you should know about history, and you should know that, how ISIS occurred, how the Syrian war evolved, how our occupation in Iraq. Those weren't just incidents that happened in the last few years. There is 100 years of history behind all of those incidents or all those issues that I think you need to be familiar with. And we got a good documentary that covers those in depth. Then week 4, terrorist adaptation. We're going to look at why certain terrorist groups succeed, while others fall to the dustbin of history, what were the factors that led to success. And the second part will be WMD terrorism, which I think is the only existential threat that terrorists can pose to the United States. So week 5, we're going to look at counterterrorism policy, what the U.S. has done well and what the U.S. has not done well in the last 15 years since 9/11. And then we'll go around the world with focus on Israel and the European Union, see what they can learn from the United States, and more importantly, what we can learn from them. Week 6 will be intelligence and counterterrorism. We're going to look at the 9/11 case study. How did our intelligence community fail to detect the 9/11 plot? And then we're going to look more importantly in the post 9/11 incidents, the Fort Hood shooting, Boston Marathon, the Christmas Day bomber, Orlando shooting. And we're going to ask the question, why do these incidents still happen despite the billions spent on intelligence and the emphasis to have better intelligence sharing process? Why are we still having these failures? And then week 7, we'll look at 2 things: the American jihadist threat, the threat posed by American citizens that travel overseas to join ISIS, to join Al-Shabaab and other terrorist groups. And then we'll look at leadership targeting, drones specifically, and see is it effective, is it not, is it worth the cost, under what circumstances is drone targeting effective. And the last week, I'm going to give you time to finish the last paper and then review for the final. I'll give some optional readings that might help, but there's nothing set for week 8. So I just want you to give emphasis on those 2 products, and I'll have a review for the final. And the final, again, is I'll talk about that in a second, but is not going to be terribly difficult if you've been following the course. So work products, this is what you owe me. So 2 papers and 1 group presentation. This is a little bit confusing. The syllabus is a little confusing, so I want to make sure it's clear at the onset. There are 3 assignments. There's a assignment 1 is due in week 3. Assignment 2 is due in week 5. Assignment 3 is due at the end of the course. You will be doing a paper for 2 of them and a group presentation for 1. I will break you down into groups on the first day, and what you're going to do is do a PowerPoint presentation, 20 minutes in length, 25 minutes, on assignment 1 if you're in group 1. You will not be doing the paper. The other groups are going to be doing a paper for assignment 1. And then for assignment 2, group 2 will be doing a presentation and the other groups are going to be doing a paper. And then for the final assignment, group 3 will be doing a paper, or will be doing a presentation, and everyone else will be doing a paper. So we've kind of split it up a little bit. And if you're not clear on that, please let me know. Again, I'll assign your groups on the first day of the class so you can start coordinating. And how that you're going to brief it is in Adobe Connect. In fact, actually, I think we're shifting over to WebEx, which is a live video teleconferencing software that will allow you to coordinate, to brief me over the computer, coordinate amongst yourselves, and allow you to actually practice your oral presentation and your briefing skills, which are part of this course or part of this program, as well as in real life. You want to be good at that type of activity. There'll be weekly discussion boards. You will be responsible for posting on Wednesday night, and there'll be 1 to 2 questions every week, and you'll be responsible for analyzing what your classmates argue and responding to them. So we have a good back and forth that really picks your interest and analyzes each one of your arguments that you guys are making. I'll say the more emphasis you do on the weekly discussion board, the one, it's important for your grade, but 2, the better your papers will be, the better you'll do on the final. And then you have the final exam. It's not going to be a trick question. It's going to be open book, open note. I'll give you the weekend, the last weekend to rehearse or to do the final, to open the final up, and there'll be a few hours, and you can do it in that last weekend on your own. So about me, I am the Senior Middle East Desk Officer for the Army, in the Army Intelligence Branch, but I've worked around the Beltway in different jobs. I was at a place called the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. You might have heard the term DTRA, where I did a red team. I was a red team analyst looking at how to replicate adversaries that can impact critical U.S. DoD functions. I worked at the DHS as an analyst, or TSA. And I've also worked at the Department of Defense, and I've been an Army officer for several years, or I was an Army officer for several years before that. So if you're coming from the military, you're deployed overseas, I can definitely sympathize. So I just want to wrap this up. I use YouTube a lot. You'll be getting a YouTube weekly from me. So if you're in a low bandwidth-ish area, please let me know so I can make the appropriate accommodations. And I look forward to working with every one of you during this course.